to the July 11th, 2024 meeting of the Technical Advisory Council of the Confidential Computing Consortium. We all get together so that we can collaborate to make the world a little safer place by adopting confidential computing. We abide by the antitrust policy of the Linux Foundation, and you can read more about that at linuxfoundation.org/antitrust-policy. We've got, I think, two main topics today. We are going to do the Q&A portion of the project proposal that we heard from our colleagues at TikTok last week, or last meeting rather. So I hope people have had a chance to review the code and consider the proposal. And then I think we have some discussion from Henry and Kevin on some potential topics for their TAC goals. And we also last time had some slides about some NIST documents that I didn't have context on. And if we have Mark joining us today, maybe we can get into that, but I don't think we have Mark today. Okay, any other topics people expected on the agenda? Right. Oh, yeah, so there's an announcement I see in chat, so maybe we can hit that in the announcement section. Let's see who we have today. I'm on a little smaller screen, so it's a little harder for me to navigate here. So do we have Harold or David?
Yeah, I'm here. This is Harold.
Thanks, Harold. Catherine? I skipped over Nathaniel.
But I don't see either, so.
Okay. Howard typically can't make this time. I see Henry and Kevin. How about Alec? Any Alec today? No. Fritz, thanks for being here. What about Yash or Ram? Huh, okay. And Mingshen or Yao?
Yeah, Mingshen's here.
Great, thanks for joining. So let's see here. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I think that just gets us to quorum, but I don't, yeah, okay. Typically, we don't worry too much about roll call, but typically we have a lot higher attendance and we don't have votes. So this meeting, we might have a vote. So having a quorum is a little more important for us. All right, so if you are new here, what I was just doing was going through the voting members of the TAC, but we are an open and collaborative community, so everybody is welcome to engage and contribute and offer their voices on any topics that we are discussing. If it is your first time here, or maybe your second time, feel free to pop off of mute. Let us know how you like to be addressed with pronouns, where you're joining from, and maybe just a little bit about your interest in confidential computing.
Hi, my name is Cosmin, and I'm joining from Munich. This is my second time here. And I am really excited to join these meetings because I feel like this is one of the really good ways to keep up with what's happening out there. And since I've been doing confidential computing in university, I feel like it's really interesting to me to be part of this.
Awesome. Thanks for being here.
Thank you.
Hi, everybody. My name's Jason, he, him pronouns. I'm joining from Lawrence, Kansas. I'm with Inveri. We offer runtime integrity solutions, but also do research with the NSA and trusted mechanisms. I'm here to help out everybody.
Fantastic. Thanks for joining.
Hi everyone. There's a few of us from Google here. My name is Tiziano. I'm an engineering lead of Project Oak. I actually used to come to some of these meetings, but I haven't done in a while. But a few weeks ago, we were in San Francisco for the Confidential Computing Summit, and we reconnected with a few people. So we're back here. So yes, Tiziano and two of my colleagues here.
Hey, yeah, I'm Andre here in Google in London. And yeah, we've been building Project Oak, which tries to use trusted execution environment and build a confidential environment for our workloads. And yeah, we've been one example of the tool we've been building is the State Zero, which is a completely greenfield implementation of a firmware for a virtual machine. So no UFEI. And yeah, we've been building on top of that, trying to address our customer needs.
Hi everyone, my name is Ivan. I'm also a software engineer on Project Oak, and I'm mostly focusing on implementing the remote attestation protocol and the corresponding encryption protocol between the client and the enclave.
Wow, that's a great group you've got assembled there. I remember learning about Project Oak at OC3. It's really nice to have you here. A few weeks ago, we had Marcella and I'm going to blank on the other person's name, but they presented it to us. Work about securing the software supply chain with what they do with I think Salsa and geez, I'm blanking on the project now. But anyway, I think that might be an interesting meeting for you to review. These are all recorded, and maybe somebody can dig up the link for that one for your benefit, because I think there's some good collaboration opportunity maybe between Oak and what I understand them to be working on with their supply chain security work. Thanks for joining.
I also introduced myself. I'm Yulia Gantar. I'm CEO of Super Protocol. We are building the confidential and self-sovereign AI cloud and marketplace, fully governed by smart contracts and exclusively powered by GEs. So we look forward to bring a new use case from, well, combining the Web 2 and Web 3 world to CCC, and of course, well, collaborate with many of you here as well. Thank you.
Great to have you here. Blockchain, I know, has been one sector that's had good uptake for TEEs, but not one that we've heard a lot from in these meetings. So really great to have you.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Anna Tcherkalinu. I am joining from Azure Confidential Computing at Microsoft, and I think it's my second time here. But I've been actually spying on you because I've been looking at the video recordings for a while. So yeah, happy to be here.
Well, that's great. I'm glad that the recordings are getting good use. Thanks for joining.
Yeah.
All right. Well, if anybody else would like to introduce themselves later, feel free to pop off of mute and just interrupt us if you didn't get a chance. Otherwise, we'll go ahead and proceed with the agenda. Last time we heard from Mark and Alec about their joint work with GRC and the TAC goal that sort of goes over what we do at the GRC in order to help have the ecosystem informed for how to adopt and utilize confidential computing. And then we heard the presentation from our TikTok colleagues on the data clean room project. And that's about what we covered, except for those announcements on the NIST messages that I guess are on the mail list. So I'll just flash these up briefly. So there's a note from Mark Novak to the TAC list, I think, where you can find maybe a little bit more context about these. For the newer folks here, what we like to do is when there is a public draft or something seeking comment, we like to get mentions of how to protect data in use into these documents so that people know that that's a way that they can achieve their security objectives. And I just noticed that Mark is on now. Mark, were you looking for people to jump in on these documents, or could you give us a little bit more context?
Well, so look, the fact that IoT could be benefited by confidential computing is no question. And when we can, we should engage with NIST, it's a standards agency, in trying to make sure that the options are presented properly to our potential customers. On IoT specifically, I actually wanted to solicit a little bit of help and maybe a little bit of tangent from this, but it fits. So if you just give me a couple of minutes. So we have met, me and I believe it was Tim and Lair from Anjuna. We're both in the GRC SIG, but we've met with the leadership of the Zero Trust Working Group at the Cloud Security Alliance actually this Tuesday, day before yesterday. And two things came out of that. One was relevant to this, and I'll say this first. They are looking for specialists in IoT and industrial control systems to help with Zero Trust. And I reached out to my other contacts, but if you believe yourself an expert and want to work with the Zero Trust group on that, I just wanted to sort of put the call out. And again, we can put the confidential computing slant on it separately. They're meeting monthly. It's a closed meeting. It's not an open invite, but we got invited because of our participation with the joint confidential computing working group. So I will be authoring a paper that illustrates how confidential computing can benefit Zero Trust. And it's framed in terms of NIST SP 800-207. And I will be putting probably up in front of consortium for review in 2 weeks' time, so that we can collect feedback and in time for this to go back in front of the Zero Trust Working Group. But we're now going to have a working relationship. Now, coming back to this, IoT, highly distributed, lots of identical, things out there in the world that all need to be managed, that all are in hostile environments. It's one of probably critical confidential computing applications now that we have hardware available ubiquitously.
Okay, thanks for that. So I think documents are a great way for people to get engaged. And so one of the other teams that we have outside of the TAC is the Governance, Risk, and Compliance SIG that Mark chairs, and do a lot of this kind of work over in that SIG, and that meets Wednesdays. Is it at this same hour?
Bi-weekly, but it's going to be next week, so it alternates with this meeting.
Yeah, and you can find out connection info on our website for the GRC SIG.
Yeah, our meetings are open to the public, so anyone can join.
Great. Okay. Well, why don't we move the show along to the data clean room proposal? And I'm gonna stop.
Should we also mention what Sal posted?
Oh yeah, thank you for reminding me of that. Yeah, so in chat you'll see the note that the use case document went out, and that's got some good reading in there that I certainly learned from reading through there. Despite how long I've been with confidential computing, it's good to get some deeper views of what companies are doing with it. That's something that we want to advertise out as well. So if you want to share that on your socials, that helps bring other people into the community. And let's see. See, Catherine joined. Thanks. Sorry you had issues with your laptop. I'm gonna stop sharing now so that Vinny or anyone else can put up material if they like. We did go through everything last time, but it might kind of help the conversation if you've got like an architecture diagram or something that represents the project that you're capable of putting up.
Yeah, I think we share the slides we presented last time. If anyone have any questions, I can answer. Yeah.
How do you
Yeah.
want to handle it then? Should I just scream into the chat or?
Just go ahead and jump in with your questions. That's great.
Yeah, go ahead.
All right, so I have a softball question to start with, maybe to get into the topic again. So I'm not sure if it was me, I missed it, but I saw your use cases that you sent, I think, an email or something, right? It's like these two, Sartre and TRE use case links,
Yeah.
but I didn't fully. So that helped me a little bit understand more of kind of what use case the project targets, because it was a little bit more fuzzy to me while you were speaking last time.
Yeah,
But I still don't fully get what these two are kind of doing, and B, how they are related, whether they are what you go for, whether they are what you already do, whether they are something you already collaborate with. So can you maybe speak a little bit about, because it's very UK specific, right? And I'm not from the UK, so can you maybe just quickly recap how you see these use cases that you posted? And then like talk a little bit about what your relation to them is in terms of do you already work with them, or do you just strive to fix their issues, if you get what I mean?
Yes. The data clean room project, the name is a little bit fuzzy because we want to get some feedbacks once we open source. The requirements or the use case came from TikTok, but when public to the open source domain, we want to gain more feedbacks from different perspective on the data clean room concept. So I will begin with the original use case at TikTok, and we'd like to expand to more use cases. But yeah, it's I think in the beginning we can focus on one specific use case. That is what I mentioned, trusted research environment. Um, this is this is not a new use case of um, uh, I would say it's not a new use case, but for trusted computing, TE, it may be a new use case. The scenario is some like public health data, economic data, and other like organization may want to be we may want to share some data to external researchers from universities, non-government organizations, and some third-party organizations to do some like data science analysis, understanding the data, understand the impact of the platform on the public health, and many other aspects. And TRE, the trusted research environment, is designed to be a so-called secure environment where authorized or vetted researcher or organizations can securely access the data without like copying the data to their place. to make sure there's no misuse of that data. So the original design of TRE, or if you look at the standard of TRE, they didn't use any like TE to protect the data in use. A naive implementation is to provide a virtual like a desktop. The researcher can access the data through the virtual desktop. But from our use case, we found out the usability by using like a virtual computing environment is a bit not that friendly to researchers, and if you want to provide better like interfaces, you need extra effort. So that's why we are building this like data clean room project to provide two-stage like a collaboration framework. So how first stage, like the researcher access small amount of data and synthetic data to do interactive programming, and then submit data to the second stage inside TE to access larger data. So that's currently is one of the TikTok's research tools that is built on top of this open source project. And since we are considering open sourcing, we have open source this project, considering donating to CCC. So we want to expand the scenario, or we want to collect feedback from the community, whether we want to focus on the TRE only, or we want to expand the scenario to other places like advertisement and marketing. We see their potentials for ads analysis, since this is also a data collaboration scenario. And we also found like in this data cleaner can be useful for some machine learning collaboration involve private data or private models. For example, a private model provider can provide their model for fine-tuning in the data clean room without review the actual model in the programming stage. So that's some hypothetical use cases where we want to get some feedback from the community. But for TRE, trusted research environment, we see this is a main target use case for this project.
I see. So the TRE and the SATRE are mostly just set as an example of what you can already currently do.
Yeah.
But you, just to see if I understood correctly, how you see it is that you see Privacy Go as kind of the goal to provide a data collaboration platform between entities. And you try, or you plan to extend the use of that in the future.
Yeah, that's true.
Okay, and so how? So the question then is a little bit to me as a follow-up, and then I'll yield to see if others have questions too. As a follow-up question, what comes up next is kind of what entities do you then currently have as a requirement? And for follow-up use cases, how flexible are you in these entities? What I mean with that question is, you will have some situations, or in your current use case, you will have the researcher entity, right, that uses the data.
Yeah.
And you may have some owner of the data, and you may then have some controller of the data or whatever, or gatherer of the data.
Yeah.
But there may be some other hidden entities or something that I didn't list right now, or that is kind of a requirement in there. So in how far does this limit the use or the future flexibility in this project? So I'm not sure if you have a slide that shows all the entities, because that would make it easier. But if you don't, maybe then just give me your best guess on how limiting your current implementation is on the number of entities that you have.
Yeah, for current implementation or current scope, we don't we only have like researchers to access the data, this kind of scenario. So researcher is the only entity and data provider, data owner. So in this scope, but we don't have limitation. We don't want to limit to only to researcher and data owner in this project. But now, since at beginning we want to focus on the specific use case, so that's why now what you see, like if you want to deploy it, there are only two participants, like data provider and researchers.
I see, but for example, one natural extension, looking also back at some papers that I did on TEs years ago, would be that you have multiple data providers that each share data, and then you would have to aggregate that somehow in the TEE without revealing the data that each provider sent in. And then if I remember correctly, you have this mechanism in place that anonymizes the data. But what happens if one of the providers is malicious, right? So can I put in some bogus data and then we basically reveal some information about the other data providers' kind of input? So not to say that I want to get into that specific question, just to figure out that is a requirement, or that is like an implicit assumption in that you will have to put into every code, right? For example, that you only have ever one data provider, you will only ever have one accessor, etc., etc. So these extensions will require work, right? So I'm just trying to figure out how easy using it will be to adjust to different scenarios and how flexible it is outside of this specific TRE context.
Yes, I think that's in our roadmap. We call multi-way collaboration, which have multiple data provider. And as you mentioned, if we have include more contributor, there will be other issues, like if some of the contributor is malicious. So it will bring some new considerations, at least when last time we mentioned between stage one, between programming stage and execution stage, we'd like to implement some kind of code understanding mechanism to make sure before executing the data with the code, we can enforce some policy or some kind of control to ensure there's no like malicious behavior on the platform. But this is not implemented yet because of the trust model of one-way collaboration is a little different from multi-way collaboration. But yes, to answer your question, we considering to bring multi-way collaboration in this data clean room project.
Yeah, cool. Because I think then you also have clear use, or you have you open up a broad number of use cases. That's interesting. Okay, cool. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
So maybe with this picture up here, for your project, which pieces of this are in your project?
Can you repeat the question again? Which pieces?
So you've got like this two-stage thing. Is all of this comprehended in software in the repository that you shared, or is it the execution stage?
I think yes, every component here is I think the only one synthetic data generation, we're using a differential private synthetic data generation for the demo. We have we are using a sort of a state-of-art synthetic data generation method, but that for different data owner, they may apply different synthetic data kind of algorithm. We haven't included the synthetic data generation in the repo, but for the interface, the programming stage, the code in the repository, it is a Jupyter Notebook plugin. So if you launch the project, you will see in the right side sidebar, there's some buttons you can look around the code and submit the task. And for the execution stage, this is mainly the DCR API, which who can dispatch the submitted task to a TE instance to for execution and attestation as well. So yeah.
Okay, that helps. Thank you. I think it also partially answers my next question. So a lot of the security properties that you talk about, you get from Google Confidential Space. I was trying to understand as I look through your code, what somebody is going to go to your code for that they don't get from directly submitting their own items to Confidential Space.
So asking question, or I don't can you, yeah.
Yeah, I was trying to separate in my mind what the functionality is that Confidential Space gives and the functionality that your project provides. And maybe
Okay.
Yeah, I'll just keep it simply as that. Yeah.
Yeah, let me keep it simple. So you have the programming stage, the front end of the Jupyter Notebook, and when you submit the task, the Jupyter Notebook will be I would say packaged in the backend, in the execution stage, and built as a Docker image. And the DCR API will dispatch the Docker image into confidential space, because confidential space is it's a Docker level isolation. You don't have to build your own guest VM, so you can just deploy the image as a container in the confidential space. And then in confidential space, we enforce the data access policy to a specific like measurement or the identity of the code submitted to the execution stage. Then the confidential space container will be scheduled and executed. And once it is done, all the metadata and the result will be stored in Google's cloud storage. And then and then the researcher can fetch the result from the Google storage. That's a basic workflow. And confidential space provide a very high-level primitive that you can deploy Docker container and to do attestation and to do a measurement of the Docker container with confidential space. So that's primitives, pretty much like you don't have to care a lot of details of TE. And we do see for other cloud provider, they have similar SaaS offering. So we do want to integrate with other cloud provider. So mainly, if you are people from your open source community, so it's very easy to launch and deploy this project simply with for example, Google account, but without like using your own hardware with TE or server with TE. So that makes sense. Very simple, and yeah, I think that's all about that.
Great, thank you. I have one more question, but I want to pause. Does anybody else have a question? Okay, so I think my last question is about attestation. Can you discuss how attestation is or isn't used in your project?
Yes, it is. So I will talk from the beginning why we need the attestation in data clean room. So in data clean room, in our case, in the threat model, we have two participant researchers and the data providers. Um, but like we do have two scenario like need attestation. First, a researcher may bring their own data onto the platform to do data collaboration. So if they don't trust the data provider, they need to make sure their data, the researcher's data, is used properly inside TE. This is one scenario. Another scenario is researcher. One requirement from researcher is they need the reproducibility of their data analytics, like experiment. So once they have done research, they can publish the result and the code and let other research to reproduce the code. So our attestation report can help other researchers to have assurance that they reproduce the same same code in the in TE. So Google confidential space provide attestation mechanism. So from the UI to the user interface level, we provide a download link in the Jupyter notebook. So when you submit the job and the task is executed, and when it's done, the attestation report will be attached with the output of that task. So the researcher can look at the attestation result and verify that, and then decrypt the result, and that's a workflow for now. And another thing I mentioned, reproducibility. This is a new feature, still work in progress. And for this feature, other researchers can fetch the existing task or previously executed task, and to rerun the research, the experiment. And then in the end, the system, the platform will compare the two measurements, make sure the task is reproducible, and let the researcher know this is the same task with the previous research. Yeah, this is still ongoing, on progress, but once we're done, we will contribute the open source. We will see that in future.
Okay, good. I like both of those. We often hear about attestation used before somebody puts something sensitive onto a machine, but we don't hear often enough about using it as an integrity check on what comes out. So I like hearing that use case. Is there also, and I'm sorry if you just said it and my mind missed it, but is there also the first kind of attestation usage where before somebody loads their data into the system, they first get an attestation of it, of the system?
Not for now. I think the current workflow is a postmortem, like a check. After the execution, we will present the attestation report to the user asynchronously. So yeah, I got your idea. I got the idea after, behind the question, but for now, since we don't want to interrupt the user experience of the researcher, we do the postmortem attestation. I mean the postmortem check for attestation report for the researcher.
Okay, so where we see like the actual data going into the instance, there's not a attestation that the data provider would verify before submitting their sensitive data into the execution stage.
Yeah. The attestation report will be presented after the execution is done.
Okay. And I had gotten to poke around the code a little bit, and I saw where there's APIs for confidential space that give you back a token from Google.
Yeah.
Is that what you're referring to as the report, or are you actually providing a direct report from the TEE?
No. Currently the attestation report provide a confidential space is a token signed by Google with I think Google attestation service have so there's no hardware signed attestation report, at least on Google's confidential space. They provide a Google signed attestation report as a token. So we will present the same token, Google signed, to a researcher. So researcher will use Google certificate to verify the token and look at the it's a GWT token, and look at the metadata inside the token.
Okay, so there is basically complete trust in Google for this.
Yeah, I think, yeah.
Okay. I will proxy what I think Mike Bursell, our executive director's opinion would be, that having an independently verifiable mechanism would be more in the probably traditional spirit of
Yeah, I
confidential.
think this is because we are relying on Google's confidential space. We don't have any option to get the hardware attestation report, hardware endorsed attestation report. If we want to rely like exclude CSP out of trusted boundary, we can definitely use confidential VM as a backend, as an infrastructure, but without using Google's infrastructure and trusting Google.
Yeah, and have we lost all of our Google folks from the call? It's unfortunate timing. It would be nice to get some discussion there. Well, maybe we can bring that up over the mail list. Maybe one other question on this token, because Mark Novak had shared in another document concerns about use of bearer tokens. What I am guessing from what you're saying is that that token, you're really just using it to check the Google signature and using that as the way to say you trust the output. But the tokens, as I understood them from reading confidential space, are bearer tokens that somebody would use in order to maybe in another use case unlock some external storage or something like that.
That's true. There are two use scenario in the project. One is for public verification, and another one is to for accessing the actual data stored in the storage. So the token will be used to access the encryption key of the data inside storage, because so the token in Google's like ecosystem is similar with the other token. You can get keys from KMS and set policy for this token. So yeah, this is two places we are using this token in the system, in the platform now.
Okay, so just so I'm completely clear here, you use both of those within Cleanroom.
Yeah. One, when you access the data stored in the storage, you need to first get the encryption key from KMS, and this is the key. To access the key, you need to have a token issued by Google to access the Google's system, to Google's ecosystem. And the second one is to access for public individual to verify the execution is indeed inside TE, and the metadata of inside token is useful for the researcher to see some like a measurement compare with for reproducibility and integrity.
Okay, thanks. Alec has his hand raised.
Yeah, I just want basic vocabulary question here. I see that arrow going up into T instances, and I just want to make sure that that T instance that's depicted there on the slide meets the Confidential Computing Consortium's definition of a T. And I think that's exactly where you were heading, Dan. I just wanted to state it in clear terms. I think what you were proposing as our chair is that we direct that question to our friends at Google and see what their opinion is on whether that thing that's labeled a T instance meets the Confidential Computing's Consortium's definition of T. In other words, hardware-based, attested thing. Is that where you were going, and can I be that concise, or am I missing some nuance?
You took a different path on that journey than I was going down, but still good question. What I understand that T instance is anything like TDX or SEV. So it's running in a VM. What is suboptimal is that rather than giving the application or the relying party the direct attestation from the TEE, part of the service of confidential space is to send that attestation to the Google verification service, and that sends you back a token. So that would be kind of like implicitly using MAA over in Azure. And I think that the problem that I would have with that is that you're not giving the customer an option. So they might elect to use the convenience and rely exclusively on Google, but they don't seem to have the option, at least from what I read recently, to get that direct attestation.
Got it. So your question, and that was super helpful. I didn't pick up that nuance during your earlier round of questions. Your question is about having an independent verifier, an attestation verification service that isn't provided by the same organization that provides the attestation report.
Right.
Now I understand. Yeah, thanks, Dan. This is a very clear explanation. We are indeed using T the hardware T. I guess it's AMD SEV. But because of the attestation mechanism, we cannot get the hardware signed attestation report. And Google provided similar like MAA attestation service to issue token to access secrets and for public verification. So I think that's a current limitation because we are using Google's solution.
Yeah, I think that's fine.
Would this application work equally well in an SEV-SMP
Yeah.
confidential VM?
Yeah. It's for same VM based TE, I think Intel as well. If we deploy for example CCNP, it's a cloud native primitive project. I forgot the full name. They can do attestation of the Docker container. So then I think for the backend of T is easily replaceable for different T implementation.
Yeah,
Got
and
it.
I think you would necessarily need a separate Intel project to do that. It's just if you were in a TD in a TD VM, you would just get the attestation through the normal mechanism. But there might be libraries like the one that you mentioned that provide some ease of use or other benefits. The main thing is whether or not the stuff that Google provides in that VM is providing you access to the direct attestation, and that's sounds like it's not the case today. So, but I don't, at least in my mind, think that that affects our view or my view of your project. It's more the whether Google has a roadmap to provide that access, or that your project would have options in the future to use a similar capability from another vendor that would provide direct attestation access.
Yes. Thank you. And the future plan, we want to support, we call multiple backends. Basically, some solution provided by other vendors. Maybe they have the direct attestation as you mentioned.
Okay. So we're about end of time for this topic. Is there anybody who, is there a voting member of the TAC that wants to make a motion to vote, or do people need more time to consider?
I'd like a little more time to consider, Dan, and I'd honestly like a consultation maybe with other voting members of the TAC to talk it through before I'm comfortable voting in either direction.
Okay. Well, we'll keep this on the agenda then for next time. So the normal means that we have for collaboration are Slack, the mail list, and the time that we have together here. So please make use of that time, and we can pick up the discussion live next time and see where we go from there. All
I'd
right.
like to hear from other voting members if we have quorum to see if they share my sentiment, or certainly the vote can proceed, and I can abstain. That's another way forward.
So at least I agree with just thinking about it more. That doesn't mean either way either. It's just I don't think I have the full information yet to vote.
Okay, well, we'll make sure that we allocate time in next meeting. And maybe Rian, you can help me make sure that we have that slotted in the agenda so that we can have more discussion. And something that's helpful for me is looking through the code, and I was able to get, I think, a more visceral understanding of the project by doing that. So suggest that to people as a way to answer questions or generate questions that maybe didn't come to mind today.
Ben, I assume a link to the GitHub project is in the meeting. I can only see the chat as far as when I joined, and it was 20 after. If somebody else can add that link to the chat, I would be very... there we go. Thank you.
Thanks, Fritz.
Very appreciative.
And you'll also see that on the mail list. So sometimes my email hides things that come from mail lists, even when I've explicitly told it not to. But you can go check out on the list server itself. It's something like lists.confidentialcomputing.org. I don't know. Somebody can find maybe a link to the mail server, but you can go there directly to get stuff that didn't show up in your inbox or that you've lost from your inbox.
Got it. Thanks.
Okay, I think next topic
Hey,
was,
Dan.
and yeah,
Real quick, before we move on to the next topic. So thank you all. Yeah, this is really helpful to have this discussion. Um, um, just from our side, are there any things we can do to make sure that, you know, you have all the information that you need to feel comfortable? Are there any members that we specifically reach out to make sure that you have, you know, you have a discussion with them too, so that you know, we can achieve some roadmap from our side as well. Yeah.
that is a great offer. I hope anybody takes you up on that. Not hearing anybody stepping forward at the moment, though. You'll, I think, also see Vinny's contact information on the mail list.
That's what I was looking for.
Or if you're comfortable dropping that into the chat, maybe people can reach out to you. There we go. Great. Well, I think everybody should have enough access to information directly from the contributors here, as well as what's posted to the mail list. That hopefully next time we can have a concluding conversation.
Yeah, that would be awesome, Dan. Yeah, something that we can concretely look forward to, so that, you know, this doesn't, I guess, you know, stretch as much, I guess.
Yeah, totally. And especially for people that are a little bit newer here, I try to convey to Vinny last time that usually we do this over 2 meetings where we get introduced to the content, and then we kind of go off on ourselves and dig around, and then we come back for a concluding discussion and a vote. It is not unusual for it to take a 3rd meeting, like what we'll be doing this time. But we really don't want to drag things out for people who are volunteering code to our consortium here. All right, well, thanks again, Mingshen and Vinny. It's great to have this proposal.
Yeah, thank you all. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right, now I'm going to turn things over to Henry and Kevin. They've been looking at what they'll be doing as leaders here on the TAC to provide some deliverables for the consortium.
Right, for sure, Kevin. How about I talk about the open source project possibility, and then you can follow up with the working group that you've been looking at.
Yeah, sure.
Right on. Hey guys, so we're thinking about open sourcing this one project that we have been working on internally. The project is mostly a small library that does attestation encrypted channel establishment, and just some C++ helper functions to do that. It was originally incepted to be open source eventually, just because it would be incorporated into some use cases that care about auditability and binary transparency. So that is the direction we want to go with it. But I think right now it has some work to do just to polish things up a bit, remove some internal dependencies, and could use more features as well, because it's still very primitive. And the other issue with it right now is that the primary developer who was working on it transitioned to another team. So we're in this ownership transition, and we're trying to ramp up on it again. So maybe by the end of this year, we can make it open source, and hopefully that's a good contribution to the community. Just wanted to see what you guys thought.
Yeah, so I think that's great. I also think the way that you're bringing this to the TAC meeting is what I want to see people do. Like, we can have these as working sessions to talk through what we want to accomplish. It's not necessary to come with a completed deliverable that you're presenting on. So I think this is great.
Yeah, it's kind of just like reinventing, I guess, like a native station library that everyone kind of has their own version of, because we have this propensity to write our own code at this company. So even though like a lot of other good open source projects exist out there, we have to evaluate them, and maybe they might not be suitable for written first. So this ends up happening a lot. We just have our own version of common open source projects. And yeah, hopefully it's valuable to the community once we polish it up a bit.
Yeah, and I would say don't worry about polish. I think like what we just saw with the clean room proposal is there's a set of features they want to add over time, and kind of seeing the direction they want to go is helpful. The downside of bringing something that you consider to be done is there's not room to grow other contributors from the community. If you arrive with something that has space to work on, then that's actually a benefit for everybody.
Right on, yeah. Oh, Kevin, go ahead if you wanted to talk about, or more to
sure.
talk about that, we can let Kevin talk about his idea.
Yeah. So another idea we had was kind of working towards the community goals. One thing that we at Meta are particularly interested in is like trying to figure out this idea of like code transparency for data center owners. As like data center owners, we are the ones, who maintain like, the TEs. And one of the challenges we face here is trying to, provide external claims about like, the code that we're running. Namely because, in a traditional model, if you were to, build your own like CVM and you get your CVM image, you'd, be able to capture the measurements there and then send it off to like, GCP or something. However, since we are the data center owners, we need to provide a way for third-party auditors or, third-party, maybe like white hat security researchers. We need to provide some sort of way to provide some code transparency for them. And for this, there's going to be, we have to figure out like the entire setup for like open sourcing code, making sure that it's reproducible and whatnot. And we figured that one thing we could do is try and like, work with like other data center owners, like, maybe like Google and Azure, who may be also interested in working in setting up like, or having some sort of similar setup to provide external claims. So I was thinking, for one of our, for a objective, we could be the ones to start up like some sort of a, working group to for this particular interest, and have, the folks from Azure or from GCP or from Google or, whatever have you, like, any folks who have their own kind of like, T hardware and it's not like renting it off from like, the existing cloud providers. Yeah, we've actually been talking with like some of the folks from Project Oak, which, unfortunately they're not here right now, but like I was thinking, if we could get into contact with like other folks from Azure or even like, from the recently released report from the folks from Apple, we could try and all collaborate and try and figure out like a way to make it consistent across like, the industry. I don't know. Does anyone have any thoughts about this?
I'm curious if you've seen any of the work or any of the documentation on the Azure Code Transparency Service. And if you have, if you could help me understand how your proposal differs from the standard Azure Code Transparency Service.
Well, I think I've only seen like brief references as to it, but I'm thinking this is more of a kind of industry-wide kind of like working group where like, we kind of all agree like, these are the things we need to do for, particular to set up like a standard for, kind of auditors to be just kind of aware of just like the ins and outs for, every single company or every single data center that's trying to provide like, this sense of code transparency. Because like, we all have our own individual setups. I think like, there's the Azure Code Transparency, there's like Project Oak, and then, whatever like we are going to do at Meta, like, figuring out like a kind of a consistency solution for this. I mean, whether it's like, we kind of all converge on like, Salsa 3 and, we do that, or we kind of like, figure out like, we kind of take inspirations from like, like Azure's code transparency service or something like, something that we all kind of agree towards. I think, yeah, that's like kind of the goal of like, setting up such a working group.
Well, I can tell you there's definitely interest. We are very much pursuing code transparency, as you've seen. Our CTO is huge on code transparency. We're struggling with the idea and auditable codes and OCP safe and SALSA and many of those initiatives. So we're trying to figure that out. We're struggling with reproducible builds and how to have a framework where customers can make reproducible builds a reality. That's not something that has been figured out yet. So
Yeah,
there's a lot of interest.
Yeah, like yeah, we're also seeing the same issues. So like, if we can, as I said, like, if we have that group that you can kind of, maybe converge and join forces to create something where like, we can all kind of work towards reproducible builds, by either working with like, the folks who already exist, like, established the reproducible builds, like, website, or just like, just some, tool that we can all collaborate on. That'd be great.
So can I just send these two links in the chat. I think it was Mark Rusinovich who actually made me aware of the group in his keynote at CCC Summit. But can you maybe diff to that this Git working group at the IETF? Are you just trying to find a forum to discuss along that draft, or is it different, or because I'm not in that area, so I just want to figure out what's your proposal.
Oh, I mean, like my proposal was just trying to like, simply just set up, like,
Just talk more.
create a channel for us to kind of collaborate.
Nice. Okay.
Like it's not like, we're going, I mean, I don't know how far we want to set this up, but at least like the first step would be, find out the people, find out the folks who are, interested in doing something, and then, create that channel so that we can actually start collaborating, as opposed to like, we all kind of do our separate things, and then like, only through like osmosis we find out like, somebody's doing this thing.
Yeah, I see. That always makes sense, right? So I guess then this is kind of related to that, I guess. Yeah.
Okay. I see.
Great. Well, it sounds like there's some interest in that. Maybe we discuss this further in the next meeting, or maybe sketch up something in text.
Yeah,
So
that sounds good.
yeah, Kevin, if you could provide sort of a compare and contrast between your proposal and the ones that already exist, or I don't know if you're proposing a project or if you're just wanting to form sort of a birds of feather group so that we can have, just a Slack channel or something.
Yeah, I think it's more of the latter. I think like once we have like, enough ideas and enough, kind of brains working at it, maybe we could come up with a more concrete idea. But yeah, this was just kind of like, something that I just found interesting, for our use cases, and perhaps like, other people with similar ecosystems. I mean, at least I wasn't aware of like any particular like, common forum until maybe Fritz just provided these. So yeah.
Yeah, actually, so one of the things that I wanted people to do is make sure that we were actually producing deliverables against the priorities that we started out the year with. And the only downside to this idea is that maybe it's a proposal for yet another area that we won't have a deliverable in. So we're spreading ourselves wider. But I think actually it's still a good thing, and I still want to pursue it. But one way to kind of bring these two ideas together is if you were to author a blog post that says, all right, Azure's got this transparency service that Alec just mentioned, and the content that Fritz just shared, and here's kind of a rough shape, and this kind of leads to motivating the problem statement of, hey, we should get together and discuss what gaps and differences there are, and maybe arrive at something more unified or common.
Then maybe even one step more proactive would be, I personally would be very interested in someone else, not me, giving a presentation to the TAC at some point about the current solutions that are there, kind of like an overview. And I mean, this can be combined, right? Like this can be one of each or something, or one person giving about everything, following with a discussion on differences or something. And then maybe from that, if there is enough interest, that we can spin off a working group or some other meetings. And if there's not enough interest, we don't have to, right? So maybe that's kind of like a loose touching whether there's enough interest. Because I can just say from my end, I would be very interested to hear that talk, but I would probably not be someone to join that group because I'm not in that area. It's just not my area. But so generally giving a tech talk about that these exist and what's currently out there would be, I think, definitely interesting. And then we can see where we go from there. Maybe that's a good approach to these things.
Yeah, that sounds like a great start. Yeah. I mean, yeah, I guess if I have enough time, enough cycles on my end, I could probably try and figure out like, what the existing kind of approaches
Yes,
are.
of
And
course.
like,
Sorry,
compare and
not meant to
contrast.
put on more work here.
Yeah, and I think there's degrees of these things. So just kind of sketching out one possible path here is that if you got together a blog post with the knowledge that you have, or you can get without too much additional effort, then that's kind of a starting point. And then maybe a tech talk based on that that brings in other people from that aspect of the community, and they can say, all right, well, we didn't cover A and B, and I can talk about those and kind of get that conversation started. And then as Fritz said, like if it seems like there's some critical mass, then we actually create a separate working group. But we can get more concrete on that as we get closer to it. But some of these tangible steps are good to get things going.
All right, sounds good.
Great.
Thanks.
All right. Well, I appreciate both of you coming in with ideas here, both good ones. And also role modeling this idea of using our time together as working time, as collaboration time, because I think that works out well for everybody. Sometimes, when there's just a presentation, there's not as much way to engage on the concept. All right.
Maybe I have maybe like I don't know, not a pressing question, but something that came up after Henry was done with this part. So one question that comes up for me is a little bit, we already have some of the station like projects in the CCC, right? I think Verizon, for example, is definitely one of the big ones there, but let me double check before I'm lying. There's also some others that touch that concept, right? So maybe a question that is vague to me, but maybe it's also vague to others, is what overlap are we fine with in the projects, in quotation marks, officially under the CCC, right? And where do we want to draw the line to say, look, Verizon 2, we would not also officially have under the CCC, or are we totally fine with redundancy? Maybe that's just me being too unique here. Yeah, it would be interesting to hear maybe other people's opinions on that.
Yeah, so we actually have, and I think this is pretty consistent across organizations like ours, a policy that there isn't like a uniqueness requirement. So if there's already a project that does something, it's okay to have a second highly overlapping project. Is that what you were asking?
Yeah, maybe. Yes.
So to the extent that was your question, like one example would be gramming and oh, somebody help me out. What's the
Open
gramming?
Enclave?
Close, but not Open Enclave. The other LibOS project that we have.
Oklum.
Oklum. Ming-Shen for the win.
Yeah, that's true. Sorry, my speakers are breaking a little bit. I only got first half of your first question, but yeah, okay. So there is definitely overlap, maybe already. So maybe I'm just worried about nothing. So then I guess if we're actively fine with that, then I don't have a question anymore there.
Yep, but that is a common assumption or question is like, do you only have one of something? So definitely good to bring up. Also, something to consider is merging ideas that you have in an existing project or your development activity into like something that's already in the open. You know, one of the benefits of having these projects that we have is that we're not all creating our own separate one. But that said, there's nothing wrong with bringing a project that's somewhat redundant, at least in scope.
Sounds good.
Okay, I think that was our last agenda item for the day. Was there anything that I missed? All right, well, I'm going to give everybody almost 40 minutes back here. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Dan.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.